Artificial intelligence is here. It's also in the pharmaceutical industry. Today I want to take you through the journey of the regulatory part of it, and starting with the FDA guidance on how we should implement artificial intelligence in the pharmaceutical industry. This is the draft guide from January 2025, and it is only a draft guidance, but I actually think it's a fairly good first version of this. And I want to take you through what are their considerations, what do they think, how should we do things. So on a learning level, this is an intermediate course, so you need to have the foundations right. And if you have not seen the foundation courses, I really urge you to go there, because a lot of the language that I will use here and the foundation part, it's covered in these two. So now we are moving up in the stack, and this will be a little more detailed, I promise you. And I will go down to a fairly detailed level of what they actually mean in this 23 pages or 28 pages long draft document from them. This document is called Considerations for the Use of Artificial Intelligence to Support Regulatory Decision Making for Drugs and Biological Products. And this is a draft guidance. And maybe you ask yourself, why do FDA bother to put out a draft guidance for this? And they actually do that to test the waters, because of course this is new for everybody in the world, basically artificial intelligence, but they are also putting regulations on us as a pharmaceutical industry in that sense, right? So they want to test the waters. Is this too tough, too soft? Is the wording where it actually should be? And when you put out regulations, this is actually, I think, a really good way to do this. So they have kind of a commenting period, and that will end here in April. When I'm recording this, it is actually just in the beginning of April. So the commenting period will very soon be over, and then they will collect all the information that they have gotten, all the comments, and then they will probably redo it in a official version. And who does this actually cover, right? So it states that it covers sponsors, manufacturers, and other interested parties involved in the drug development. And it's not because people are interested. It could be an IT supplier that actually delivers either a full AI-powered application or tool or whatever it might be, or some of it in that sense, right? And then the manufacturer takes it and integrates it into what they have in their business processes, right? So there might be several parties in this. So if you are a supplier of artificial intelligence tools, applications, then this is actually also for you, because you need to understand it. And when we dig further down in to the details of what that actually means, it will be fairly clear that the manufacturers, sponsors, or whoever it is, will need to have support, technical, specific, detailed support in all of this. And it also covers both human and animal drugs, both biological products and also combination products. And in my vocabulary, combination products is devices or apps or things like that in combination with a drug or with a biological product is given out, right? So it might be a pin or a pump or an app or whatever that is registered together with that specific drug that in some way also has some artificial intelligence incorporated. That is the scope of this. So let's dig a bit closer down into what is actually in scope and out of scope of this when we talk about artificial intelligence. So if we are talking about which AI models are in scope for this draft guide, then it's the drug product lifecycle, but it's the information, data, that supports the regulatory decision-making process. And that's including the safety, effectiveness, or the quality of the drug. So if it's impacting any of these, right, that can harm the patient in any way, then it is in scope for this draft guidance. And then on the other hand, what is not included? So what's out of scope for this? So the drug discovery, you can probably call it a bit more creative process that we have around finding new drug candidates. So that is not in scope. Everything regarding the operational efficiency that we have, if it's the internal workflows that we have, resource allocation, drafting or writing documents, even if it's regulatory submission, right? Because everything needs to be reviewed, approved, and so on before it's sent to the authorities, right? So we have humans in the loop. And there's a bit of a but in this as well. So if it impacts patient safety, drug quality, or non-clinical or clinical studies, it's actually on in scope side. They have stated that. So I hope this gives you a bit of a better idea of what is in scope and what is out of scope. So FDA has made this risk-based criticality assessment framework with 7 steps. And I want to take you through all of these steps, first high level, and then go through one of the examples that they actually have in their draft guidelines. So let's start with the first step, that is to define the question of interest that will be addressed by the AI model. So what is it actually that it needs to solve for a business purpose, you can call it, right? Then you need to define the context of use for the AI model. And if you read the guidelines, they use this COU very often, the context of use. So what is the context of the AI model? What is it actually, where should it operate in, right? What is the operational range of it in that sense? Then step 3 is the assessment of the AI model. And I will go further into that. So step 4 is develop a plan for establishing the credibility of the AI model outlined with the context of use. So depending on what you need to use it for, you also need to actually look into, does it actually also work for this context then? Then the simple part, execute that plan, as we probably know. Then you need to document all of the results, discuss the deviations that might be there. And then the final part is actually step 7, to determine the accuracy of the AI model for that specific context of use that you have defined upfront. So that's the 7 steps of this risk-based credibility assessment framework. So FDA has actually included 2 examples in this draft guidance. One of them is for the clinical development. And I want to just take you through the example that they have done. Give you a little context into that. I've only copied a few sentences in. So we are at a stage where this patient probably need to have their first dose, and therefore usually patients are under surveillance for some hours to see if they will get any adverse reactions of this drug. So it might be a first human dose, I don't know, but it could be that. So this is for examples only. So here they state that they would like to define the question, that is the first step. So they have 24 hours inpatient monitoring after the first dose because they have a concern regarding adverse reactions. So, and they would like to use the AI model to actually predict the low-risk patients because then they can actually be sent home. So that actually means that there are patients with low risk and there are patients with a high risk. And they would like to use this AI model to predict that based on data that they actually know, apparently. So that's the case that they would like to use the AI model in. So predicting, is a patient a high-risk patient or a low-risk patient? So step 2 is to define the context of use on the AI model, and we have touched a bit upon it. So basically, they would like to use this model to determine is a patient high or low based on patient characteristics and lab values, and then have the AI model predict that. And if it's a low risk, then they will send the patient down home. Or if it's a high, then there will be in-person care. So for step 3, we need to assess the AI model. And in this case, they would actually like the AI model to be the sole determinant of the outcome of this, right? So is the patient a high-risk patient or low-risk patient? And that has severe impact on the patient if they are guessing wrong or determining wrong in that sense. So the influence of this is really, really high. And based on the model that you can see on the right, then we have a high-risk AI model here. And I think for those that have been in the pharmaceutical industry and worked with patients, yes, of course, this is a high-risk thing, giving patient a pill or something like that for the first time. That can be pretty severe if it has some reactions and you just send the patient home. They could probably die, worst case. So step 3, the model is deemed high risk. So step number 4, that's a huge one. Developing a plan to establish AI model credibility within the context of use. And I know I've probably said criticality a couple of times, but this is actually credibility of the AI model. And I know it's a lot to take in, so maybe have a sip of your coffee before we continue. I will at least. So we are now here in this example. This is a high-risk AI model, and I would urge you to reach out to the FDA if this is a high-risk model that you are working on, or you have an idea of that. And where to reach out to the FDA. So in that draft guidance in the appendix, there is actually email addresses for the different areas depending on if it's a device or it's clinical trials or whatever it is that you are working on. I think you need to work with step number 4 before you actually contact them. But I think it's really necessary that you not spend 2,000 hours on something that they will not approve nevertheless, right? Or that they see different in any way, right? Because step number 4 here is super critical. And this is probably the biggest part of everything. And I could probably speak a whole video about this for 20-30 minutes because there's so many elements to this one. So listen very, very carefully to this part of it. So here you need to describe everything about the model and how it's trained. So that actually means, so why have you chosen this specific model, right? And come with rationales for that, right? So what problem is it that you need to solve? The context of use, right? So is it text that it needs to put together? Then it's probably certain models. Is it picture analysis or x-rays or scanning pictures? Then it's something else you probably are looking for, right? You need to describe the architecture of your AI model. So it's not the infrastructure architect that they are talking about here, right? So it is the whole neural network set up and all of the parameters that we have around that, right? So now you remember that we have this artificial intelligence, machine learning, deep learning scheme, right? And now we are at the deep learning part of it, right? So that is how we have architectured that deep learning setup, or at least are planning to do it, right? And why we have chosen that. So why is this Llama 3 model or OpenAI O4 Mini really good for this, right? You need to actually put in all of these rationales and all of the parameters that you have tweaked and put in, basically, right? So why have you put them in, right? Why not others? Then you need to make sure that the training plan is set. And I think here it is really, really important, the data that you use, right? So the the training and development data that needs to be a different set than the test data. So there needs to be data independence of everything that you do. So you cannot train a model on data then test on the same part of it. You can actually do that when you do validation of IT systems, right? In that sense, or probably similar things, right? But here you cannot at all, right? So they will be very strict on that. So it also means that you need to know the limitations of the data that you have trained your model on, right? And in this case, we are in the clinical development space, right? So you probably have something regarding the demography of the subjects that you have in, right? So there's probably an age, so from 18 to 42. If this is let's say that we have an obesity drug, right? There's probably a BMI that you cannot go above or be beyond in that sense, right? So what is that? And you also need that further when you actually use it for real world decisions, right? Because if there is a patient coming in that is older than 42, say like 52 or 60, right? Can you not use the model? It depends, right? You need to argue that, right? Should a doctor actually decide that, or should that patient automatically be flagged as a high, and then let's see what actually happens, right? So we actually take caution. I think you need to argue all of that and put it in, and also make sure that that is actually also how it works when it's live in that sense. So all of this you need to describe, right? And I think you need to take all of that to the FDA if this is a high-risk model. You should probably work a bit with it before you take it to FDA. But if they don't buy it in that sense, or they have inputs that you need to implement, you need to do it that way, right? Because they need to approve these kind of things. And sometimes also, if it is a low risk, I think having that input, at least where we are at the moment, I think it's really, really important, because it's also probably a learning opportunity for them in that sense, right? And I think working with the limitations of the data and how we actually display it to the end users of this model in the end, if that is nurses or doctors or whoever that might be in this case, right? So who actually decides or run the AI that actually gets the results, and how to interpret that result, that needs to be crystal clear in the end. So this development of this plan is really, really important. And I know we have probably only scratched the surface of it at this moment. But if you want me to maybe deep dive even more into this and make an even better example of this, where we actually go way, way further in, then let me know in the comments that you would actually like to see step 4, develop a plan even further. Then I will try to make that in the future. Step number 5, executing the plan. That's the easy part of it, right? Just executing as you have actually planned. But I think a really important part of this is actually to make sure that you have involved FDA sufficiently, depending on your criticality of your AI model and your context of use, right? And so if you have a high risk, make sure that they have actually accepted that they also see that the plan you have will also fulfill their requirements in the end, right? I think that is really crucial, because otherwise you are just wasting your time. But from here, it's just executing what you have actually planned. So after you have executed, now it's time to document the results of the credibility assessment plan and discuss any deviations from that plan. So now you have all the test results. Now you need to conclude on it, basically, right? So you need to show that you have established credibility of the AI model in the context of use that you are going to use it for, right? If you have had any deviations in terms of what you actually planned to what is actually happened in reality, then you need to discuss that and conclude on these that they did not have any critical impacts, like you also do when you do validation of IT systems and these kind of things. And the last part is actually now you need to discuss with the FDA whether, when, or where to submit that report, right? Because they would actually like to see it, right? So there are three options, and they don't describe it if you can choose one or you might be forced to do all of them. I don't know, but these are the three options that they have put in, right? So the first one is self-contained document, right? So like a validation report. This is also a credibility assessment report that we have. That is one option. It could also be part of a regulatory submission, right? So in this case, when we do a clinical trial, it actually might be part of the protocol and that regime, or part of so if we are on the market, part of the submission for a new drug application. Or it will be discussed in meetings, right? So there's a series of meetings where you need to describe to FDA, present, and they will probably ask questions to the different things. So if it's only one, or if it's more, they have actually not described in detail, and I think they will probably keep that open. But these are basically the three elements that you need to make sure that you actually, so the end goal of your credibility assessment, that you actually can show the FDA that you are fully on top of everything. So now we are at step 7, and you get an approval from the FDA and you are good to go. That's one option. The other options are as follows, right? And I think this is actually a really good example of one of the good things with the draft guide, that FDA has actually put in some characteristics of things that might actually happen where you need to put in more controls, right? And I will walk you through the controls one by one and try to address how that actually might be in real life. So the first one is actually the sponsor might downgrade the influence of the model, right? And in our case, the goal was to set out the AI model to be the sole determinant of is it a high risk or a low risk patient and should they be sent home. If that is not good enough for FDA and us, and we cannot show it in the data that 100% of the time it will be right based on what we have, then we will probably take a step back and say, okay, could it be a guidance to the doctor that is sitting there, saying, we can see that this is actually a low-risk patient, but it is the doctor's call to do whatever that doctor think is necessary, but have it as a guidance instead. So that way you actually lower the influence of the AI model and also change the context of use for that model, because then it changes from being the sole determinant to a guidance system in that sense. For the second point here, then you actually go back and add more data to be sure that your arguments are actually right. It might be that you are in a situation where the model is maybe not hitting things 100% of the time. So you will actually increase the training data with new training data. In our case, maybe from more learning in real trials, so it will probably take more time in that sense. But that could be the case. So you are training the model to be even better by adding more data into your model. Number 3 is that the sponsor may establish appropriate controls to actually mitigate the risks. In our case, I could definitely see to have a human in the loop for this. Or to say, instead of sending people home straight away, they will actually stay there for an hour or two, so we actually know that they are okay. So it could be these kind of controls that you can actually put in. So for number 4, the sponsor may change the modeling approach, and here we are in the deep learning part of it. So we are tweaking the different parameters that we have to make sure that the model actually works the best, right? So this could, for instance, be that you are feeding it the same result, but you're also expecting the same result every time. So it should not be creative in any way, because here we want to be specific, right? So give it, 100 times the same patient, and it should give that the same results, saying that this is a high risk patient. This is a high risk patient if you are feeding it the same data. So it could be things like that. So point number 5 is that the sponsor may consider the credibility of the AI model inadequate for the context of use, right? So that actually means that you're actually throwing it away and saying that actually doesn't work. We need to have a different AI model and basically go back to the design steps and redo all of this, because this actually doesn't work. The architecture behind it was not solid enough, or it actually did not fulfill the context of use. So we actually with real precision could show that this is really good. So these are the 5 outcomes that could happen if it's not straight away approved, that you could go through. So now we have planned everything, we have tested it, we have reported it, and now we are moving into the lifecycle management part of it. So it's really important that you are able to use your AI model during the full life cycle of your drug. So the context of use needs to stay the same, and the results needs to stay the same, right? And you need to have some kind of lifecycle management that is risk-based over this period of time. So you need to build up some kind of continuous review of things, maybe some tests. Maybe you actually need to have further learning of the model so it can actually keep up with things that are developing, right? Because it is a natural evolving element and learning element, these AI models. And it might actually self-evolve, and you need to make sure that it actually sticks to what the context of use that you have defined it for, right? And I think use all the good lifecycle management practices that are already established in your company. I think that is also what they are emphasizing, right? But I don't think that you should underestimate this part of lifecycle management. And again, if you want me to go into more details into lifecycle management, please comment, and I would be happy to make a separate video on how you do lifecycle management on these kind of models. So this was a deep dive into the FDA draft guidance on how we in the pharmaceutical industry and all our suppliers should do artificial intelligence implementations in our companies. I hope it really struck your curiosity. Remember, this is still a draft guide, so many things can change. But I think you probably now have a sense of the detailed level with the 7 steps that we have been through. What is the rigor of actually getting this approved by the FDA? And we also talked a bit about the lifecycle management of this, and we shouldn't forget this, right? Because this is not a static product. It is actually things that can develop over time, so we should take that into account. Please let me know if you like these kind of videos in the comments below. It will help me actually grow this channel and hopefully also develop more new content for you guys out there. Thank you for sticking to the end. Have a great day.